Can you claim you're truly omnichannel if you don't have a mobile app? Welcome to a new episode of the No Hack Show, a weekly podcast where we discuss many different ways you can optimize your online presence. I'm Kath, and in this episode, we're talking about mobile. Is it worth investing given the move to privacy and high friction for customers? Joining me to weigh in on the power of mobile is Neal Goyal, a DTC coach for 50 million plus brands. He is the team lead and strategic account executive at Tapcart, where he helps enterprise DTC brands on Shopify Plus solve challenges with conversions, retention, CX, customer acquisition, and engagement. Neal, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Catherine, thank you so much for having me. I've been listening to the show for a while, and so thrilled for the opportunity to be chatting with you here today.
Great. Well, before we geek out on mobile apps today, I just want to mention that very nice shout out from Adam Kitchen a while back. I don't know, I'm sure you remember it. Adam is a friend of the podcast. He's been guesting with us for like a couple of times already, but he did say you're one of the most helpful and generous in the community. And coming from Adam, who's also like that, I'm pretty sure that that felt special. How did you feel when you saw that?
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, it felt so awesome to hear Adam say that. Adam is such a respected individual in the community. Whenever he gives advice, it's considered to be sage and wise by all definitions. And at the end of the day, he's an amazing human too, right? So I
He
had the
is.
opportunity to, meet with him a few times to
Oh,
talk about
really?
different
Yeah.
strategies in terms of, scaling his agency as well as what we're doing here at Tapcart and kind
Mhm.
of, sharing experiences. And quite frankly, I enjoyed my, time with him and was very, thankful for what he shared about me.
That's so cool. Like as you said, more than, talking about Magnet Monster, it's really him just sharing his knowledge and loving educating the community. So that's so awesome. So we have a lot to unpack in the world of mobile, but I want to focus on three main issues, or because you're in sales, three main objections, starting with the privacy updates. Everyone's been aware when I think it was fall of September 2022 when they started iOS 14, the app tracking transparency, where you can opt out of apps. And then after that, that's mail privacy protection. Now, coming this fall is iOS 17, which is the link tracking protection. It basically removes tracking parameters from links. So, and that affects mail, messages, and Safari browser. So, do you think this will affect mobile in general, or how do you think, because you're very well versed in e-commerce, how do you feel this will impact e-commerce in general?
Yeah, great question. I think when you think about the e-commerce marketer, like they've been dealt one curveball after another over the last couple of years, right? Just like you mentioned, the start of iOS 14, where they just made it, astronomically difficult to market on Facebook like they, previously could before, where, cost of customer acquisition was cheap. And that's how most of these brands fuel their growth, right? And once that, limitation on access to data to be able to, target the right audience, you see conversions drop, you see, the quality of their traffic drop, and as a result, customer acquisitions, continue to go parabolic. And so when marketers were just like trying to get over that and wrap their heads around that, then comes iOS 15,
There's a new
right?
one. Yeah.
And iOS 15, they're focused. And then now Apple's got its sights set on email and email privacy and everything that spans there. So brands and marketers saw open rates drop, click-through rates drop, more messages, going into spam folders, all the kind of traditional, like email mechanisms where a brand built their strategy around retention around email was severely impacted, right? And then you have iOS 16 that came out, focusing on the SMS world, the concerns about the potential for promotional folder in an SMS inbox, and then more importantly, the report junk button that is now inside every single text message you get from an unknown
Right.
sender. The opt-out rates, are heading straight higher, right? So each one
Mm-hmm.
of these channels has become more and more difficult for marketers. So I think marketers, heading into iOS 17, have already gotten to a place where they're like, okay, what's coming next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality. So iOS, 17, where they're essentially removing, the link tracking capability, essentially the identifiers that are within these links, essentially giving less insight into attribution and what that specific customer journey was like. And that is going to present a lot of challenges. I think it's obviously going to impact brands that are, on Facebook and particularly Google Ads the most, right?
Hmm.
It might impact Facebook a little bit less simply because most of that browsing is taking place in a native app, and that this iOS 17 is not really touching that realm. It's more
Hmm.
focused on the impact on browsing capabilities. So
Yep.
when you think about that, how does that all transition into mobile marketing and the impact on like, where that fits and where potentially how does an app even fit into that conversation around privacy? So when you think about it, every single one of these privacy initiatives that have come through have only helped fuel the mobile app phenomenon and the desire
Hmm.
to launch an app. Because if you
Hmm.
think about what an app is in the first place, where are we living? We're living in Apple's ecosystem. We're already part of Apple's ecosystem. So we've already been living with these privacy these privacy rules as a part of the App Store from the very beginning. No part of this is new, right? And so
Right.
when you think about the concept of retention, the concept of attribution, well, these are the scenarios where the mobile app world is fairly unaffected by each one of these. If anything, it amplifies the need for an app. Hence why, if anything, it's been a tailwind for Tapcart or any mobile apps as a channel in general.
Right, because I see what you're pointing out there. When you install a mobile app, it's a conscious action from the user to actually install to create your account. So everything is consent based. And I think this privacy apps, props to Apple, not just because I'm an iPhone user, but I think that the drive to privacy is really a one step forward, especially for the users. So I'm kind of thinking marketers just have to live with these things. And you're right, like there's going to be more. There's going to be probably Android coming, following suit, and everything's going in that direction. And I know what you're saying, and that's one of the reasons why you're supposed to, you should be investing in a mobile app. But then my next objection there is the friction. Is it too big of an ask to download an app and, switch
Sure.
from my traditional online browsing to or online shopping to now doing it via the mobile app? And I want to point out like one post that I saw on LinkedIn. He said he was forced to for he was the company forced him to download an app to actually purchase, and it's just too much work for him. And he's a marketer, he knows what's going on. But then what he did was basically, just because it was a gift, he had to download the app. And then after purchasing, he went ahead and deleted it. So, what do you
Sure.
think about that scenario?
Great question, right? So first, let's use that example, but then let's also back up a little bit higher level of like who
Sure.
is an app for in terms of your customer base, right? So the app for a brand is not meant for anyone and everyone. It's actually meant to
Mm-hmm.
more target your top 20 to 30% of your most loyal base, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that are brand fans. They're purchasing more frequently than the average customer maybe. They're more engaged with the brand. They want to be in the know, so they download the app because they want access to some kind of unique experience that they can't get anywhere else, because they are getting access to exclusive offers, being treated like a VIP, getting a personalized experience that they can't get elsewhere. So it's speaking to that more loyal base, right? When you think of this particular marketer you mentioned, where he received a gift for a product and now he wanted to return it, and this particular brand may have used that as a way to drive that app download just in the form of the return.
Mm-hmm.
you know, at the end of the day, he was likely not a first time buyer, or he probably likely was a first time recipient of that brand's particular, product, and was
Mm-hmm.
probably not that loyal shopper, so didn't really find value in the app, right? The
Mm-hmm.
value in the app is not just about shopping. It's not about just the transactional experience. It's more about like the immersion and the content experience, the having exclusivity to certain aspects that they can't get elsewhere, finding a sense of community for other loyal brand fans to kind of drive conversations and engagement around that brand. So again, it's going to be focused on that more loyal, top 20-30%. So when you think about it now, why would a you're absolutely right when you say the friction, the steps that you need to take to download that app.
Yep.
That also illustrates that how high intent that individual is willing to be once they download that app as well, right? If they're willing to take those steps. So when you think
Mm-hmm.
about well, what happens? What's the benefit to the brand of launching the app, and then flipping that script and saying, well, what's the benefit to the end customer for downloading the app, right? The When you think about the app is living on the device home screen, right? This is a
Mm-hmm.
scenario where you're not living in a browser, you're not living in an
Yep.
email inbox, you're not living in a text message thread, but you're living directly on the device home screen. And just by virtue of that fact alone, the real estate play is where you're going to be driving so many more sessions into the brand that are possibly achievable in any other channel, right? The consumer is looking at their phone for 6.5 hours a day, scrolling left and right across that brand's icon all day long. This
Yep.
is going to prompt this kind of subliminal desire to just click into the brand, see what's happening. And that is what's going to end up driving more frequent purchases in that process, right? So the outcome for the brand is more frequent, visits, more frequent purchases, but the user has to find value too. It's got to be fresh for the user. It's got to have the, fresh content constantly appearing. It's got to have that sense of community. It's got to give that feeling of exclusivity, because if it's not doing that, then you're absolutely right. Someone's going to uninstall that app.
Right. So to be clear, Neil, you're saying brands should not force all their customers to download an app and shift to the app environment. Is that what you're
That's
saying?
correct. That's correct. I mean, at the end of the day, the app is not meant for everybody. It's meant to target your more loyal base. So now the question is, if you bring your loyal base into a channel that is just going to bring them into the brand more frequently than ever before, what happens when that loyal base is just visiting the brand more? They're going to inherently buy more in the process, right? By developing that deeper connection with the brand that they didn't get elsewhere, right? And so by virtue of that, I think that's the key piece, is like when we think of an adoption rate is the term we use for how many downloads can I expect for my app in year one, right? Like every brand, that's a big question we get all the time, is how many are going to download my app?
Mm-hmm.
The easiest places to understand like who's going to download your app is by looking at your email and SMS lists, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are individuals that are lower in your funnel. They have engaged with the brand. Maybe they've made a purchase, maybe they haven't, but again, they're in lower parts of the funnel. This is not top of the funnel traffic that we're talking about here. And so you're going to notice that somewhere between 5 to 10% of your active email list and 5 to 10% of your SMS subscriber list, they're going to all download that app in over the course of year one. And so that's what we kind of base our assumptions around, is
Got it.
modeling off of like a very limited segment. We're not expecting 50% of their customers to download the app. We're actually
Mm-hmm.
forecasting for 5 to 7%. If
Mm-hmm.
just 5 to 7% download the app of the audience, 5 to 7%, that'll end up becoming a 21% contribution to total revenue for the brand. So on average,
Wow.
we're bringing a 20 to 21% total contribution of revenue as a second most frequented sales channel behind the website alone, simply by
Mm-hmm.
taking a really small audience and getting them to purchase more frequently.
Yeah, because they're heavier users. Wow.
Yep.
And I'll ask more Tapcart related questions later. But just going back to that particular post that I saw, and I have to verify this, one even commented that Adidas, the shoe brand, forces you to download the app just to be able to see shipping and pricing of the product. I'm not sure if it's like for every product that they have on the store, or if it's just for a particular style or model, or if it's just marketing. But what can you say about that? Isn't that like too big of an ask for someone to download just to see the price? That's kind of too much, right?
Yes, you could say that, but it also has driven 1 million downloads of Adidas's mobile app in the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you think about it, you're absolutely right. Like conceptually, you're like, why would I hold something back? I think that could be an effective strategy for driving that app download. I think the fact that Adidas is willing to do that and saying, hey, I'm not going to show it to you here, but I'll only show it to you in the app, shows how much Adidas values getting that customer into that particular sales channel. Because if
Mm-hmm.
that customer downloads that app, they're just going to spend 3 times the amount that they were going to spend anywhere else, right? With
Mm-hmm.
Adidas. So what can I do that doesn't give it over here in all of these other public environments? Instead says, I'm going to give this as an app exclusive experience, meaning whether it's access to pricing. Yeah, it sounds a little extreme there. I personally, we personally don't really experiment with that particular strategy on our end.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it shows to the lengths that large brands like Lululemon, Adidas, Nike what they're doing to drive users into that app as a funnel, because the LTV on those users is so much higher than any other
Right.
channel, right?
I think I remember now. It's for the Messi campaign. So probably because that Messi has a loyal fan base, then they're willing to stretch out and do that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we built Leo Messi's app as well. So Messi has his own fashion brand too, called the Messi
Mm-hmm.
Store.
Mm-hmm.
Go download the Messi app, and it's an amazing experience that we designed that essentially says, hey, we're gonna launch these products earlier in the app. So
You'll
if you
get
want
earlier
access to these
access.
earlier access to these products or collections or these new drops that we have, go download the Messi app, and you're gonna have early access to it before anybody else. This is what gets people excited about driving it into the app, and then you see the results and outcomes that come for the brand as a result of doing that, right?
Right. And you mentioned a couple of metrics there while we're talking. So definitely app downloads is one thing that you track. What about uninstalls? I mean, of course, revenue from the app is definitely a key metric. What other
Sure.
metrics are important? And should you also be mindful of the uninstalls? Because that matters too. Like, is this a
Sure.
one time thing?
Sure. So first is the number of downloads, right? Like we talked about. Then once the users download the app, you'll notice that they have to opt in to push notifications, right? So a common question we get is what percentage of those that download actually opt in to push notifications? That answer
Mm-hmm.
on our end is 81%, right? Now that sounds high. Like why is that so high? Think about who that human is that took the step to go download the app. That is a fan. They want to be in the know. They want to have that early access. They want that exclusive sale or discount or promotion or whatever it is. So they are likely to opt in, hence why the opt in rates across our platform are quite high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then as you continue to, I think the largest and most core metric to watch is kind of a culmination of three. First is the number of sessions from each user. So if you were to
Mm-hmm.
go to any brand's website right now and you go look at their top of funnel traffic and you say, okay, they have this number of monthly sessions and those sessions are coming from a certain number of unique visitors or users. If you take the sessions divided by the visitors, you're going to get a number like somewhere on 1.2, maybe
Mm-hmm.
1.3 for someone that's doing it really well. But again, that's 1.3 sessions per user per month. That's in the grand scheme of things quite low.
Mm-hmm.
When the user downloads the app, we're going to take that figure and minimally triple it, right? Simply as a function of living on the home screen and weaving push notifications into the mix. So now that user is visiting 3, 4, 5, 6 times every single month. Then they come in, those sessions are also converting at higher conversion rates than anywhere else on the web. Why? An app is also removing those friction points. More immersive experience, better mobile experience, more better conversions along the way, fewer clicks to the checkout, remove the friction points, and you send those conversions straight out. Number three, give users a better, more intuitive shopping experience on mobile. They're going to intuitively add more to the cart. Think of
Mm-hmm.
why Amazon's so successful. It's just so easy to add an extra item you didn't intend to buy to the cart because Amazon just makes it so easy. So the AOVs
Mm-hmm.
are going to be like 20, 25% higher in the app too. The culmination of all of that is the customer lifetime value, the LTV of what that customer is going to spend over a period of time. And that's where when you talk about data points, incrementality is the key because the reality is you are taking a portion of those users that was previously shopping on the website, moving them over to the app. So people are thinking, am I cannibalizing sales? Am I like moving one user to another user channel? Like what's the value of doing that? The question is there a world where someone finds your brand's app, falls in love with the app, falls in love with the experience, chooses to stay on the app, shop on the app, and doesn't go back to the website because they love the app so much? And the answer is yeah, but you want that to happen because now they're visiting 3, 4, 5 times the frequency than they were before, converting at higher rates, at higher AOVs. So the real question is, what is the incremental lift you're
Mm-hmm.
bringing to LTV? Not just total LTV of that customer, the incremental lift by that increased purchase frequency, and that's what the whole app model is based off. Is that incrementality that you have to showcase, and all of that lives in Shopify for you to manage and see as well.
I love that. And just a quick recap. So definitely the number of downloads, the number of people who allows the push notification, the pages or the amount of time per session, the average order value, and the LTV. So those are the things that, how do you equate like the uninstalls to the LTV equation?
Yeah, so like when you think about like what is the largest contributor to, user or brand seeing uninstalls with their app, it's typically if they treat the app as a set it and forget it channel,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
some brands, again, at the end of the day, we have, most brands, no matter how much success they've achieved, particularly ones on Shopify, they're really lean teams, right? So you think of oftentimes they're spread really thin. So if they're not able to devote any like the brain power towards making the app an enriching experience, a VIP experience on an ongoing basis, that user is eventually going to not find value in giving that piece of home screen space to the brand, and they're going to uninstall the app,
Just delete.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, they're going to. So at the end of the day, the goal is to keep the app fresh, to give the users an experience that they can't get elsewhere. For drop-based brands, do leverage the app for early access. Collect data points, have quizzes, gamify the experience, community building. These are all the things that you can do inside an app that are going to drive that increased engagement and decrease the likelihood of an uninstall, right?
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned my third objection, which is cannibalization. Will my mobile app cannibalize my website? And I want you to kind of answer this by citing that TikTok case study that you mentioned a couple of months back. It was a beauty brand that was TikTok born, and they were an overnight hit. But because it's on TikTok, they were smart enough to invest in an own channel, and based on the stat, mobile app accounts for 40% of their 2.2 million in monthly sales. So can you share that case study?
100%, right? So when you think of this particular brand, they blew up on TikTok. I mean, it was they went from being a really small brand to literally just a huge hit overnight, and now it's been kind of sustained at that level, which is pretty incredible to see. But if you think about it, TikTok gave them this opportunity to have all of a sudden, a lot of eyeballs in their direction. Number of their posts and content pieces went viral and just got a lot of attention. This brand at the same time had a lot of concerns there, and most brands will, right? They love TikTok for what it is right now, but they're also uncertain what's going to happen with TikTok down the road. So I think brands are inherently scarred to a certain degree with their over reliance on organic social
Other
back
channels, yep.
in other social channels, Instagram, Facebook. Those organic channels are nowhere near where they once were, and TikTok's organic is just crushing it right now, and that's like really exciting. But most brands are treating it like, let's enjoy this while it lasts, right?
Right.
Because organic inevitably does change over the course of time.
Mm-hmm.
So now when you think of TikTok, when you are marketing on TikTok, that you have that piece of content or creative that gets that user excited, what do? They click, right? They
Mm-hmm.
click over to the brand's website. Now, think of who we are as a human that's on TikTok. We are programmed to have no attention span. The attention
Yep.
span of a gnat, right? Like,
Yeah. three
scroll, scroll,
seconds, four
scroll.
seconds. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So now think of that same attention span. You click and you go to a brand's website that is in every, by all definitions, completely boring compared to what they were viewing on TikTok, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you see really much lower conversions coming from social overall too, right? Simply
Mm-hmm.
because it's just an attention economy
Different
type of thing,
experience.
right?
Yeah.
So that one single web session, whether it was paid or whether it was organic, that one single web session, maybe they bought something, maybe they don't. 98.5% of the time, they're not buying anything. That
Mm-hmm.
web session is lost forever, right? Unless you say, okay, whether I'm doing something organic or like whether the creative is organic or whether it's, paid, what if I were able to drive that app install to tease that user that they will have that same content rich type of experience that they're
Mm-hmm.
enjoying right now, give them some kind of exclusive unique offer to download it. Now they've given you a piece of their device,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now instead of that one single web session, which that web session may never happen again, now you have a piece of real estate where you can remarket to them in unlimited fashion in perpetuity, where they're going to come back 3 to 7 times per month for that same amount you may have paid on that paid ad, or
Mm-hmm.
or any attention you may have driven organically on TikTok, right? And this was something that the brand really was prioritizing, was saying, how do we get our customers into an owned channel. Take advantage of what TikTok's giving us in the form of attention, but leveraging that attention to get users into a channel that they can continue to remarket to. And so when you look at this particular brand, as much as they just blew up on TikTok and all of those initial purchases were top of funnel, first time customers type of acquisitions, the reality is if you fast forward just 2, 3 months of that figure, about 35% of their total revenues inside the app is coming from, sorry, 35% of their total brand revenues are coming from repeat shoppers, when previously
Hmm.
that number was less than 10%, right? So they've
Right.
captured that audience into a channel where they can remarket.
I love that. And you mentioned earlier that you should actually consider the incremental sales that mobile apps are adding because you now have that, you own that channel.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And I think the best way to wrap up this episode is to talk about Tapcart. Now I'm really curious. I only have like two mobile apps installed and they're purely shopping. It's I was at the checkout at the retail store and they said, "Would you like to download the app for additional X plus discount?" I'm sure. And that was it. But now you're saying that experience has to be different. There should be a content there. How do you do that? Like what does Tapcart do for their brands?
Sure. So when you think of what a personalized experience means, that's a different definition for every brand, right? And so when you think about when you're building an app or launching it or looking to, develop one, it's not about trying to replicate what's on the website. The website is trying to speak to anyone and everyone that's willing to buy, right? It's trying to appeal to a much larger audience. Whereas when you think of your app, think of who your user is. They're probably going to be a more loyal customer. They're that top 30%. So you should be designing an experience that's speaking to that loyal customer, right?
Right.
And allow it to be personalized to them. So what does personalization mean? It could mean curation and putting that user down different push notification journeys depending on who they are, what their behavior is, what their interests are, what their persona is, what their buying behavior was historically like, what their engagement behavior was historically like. So having personalized conversational push notifications, building a sense of community where users are kind of invited to have these exclusive benefits that they can't get anywhere else. You think of like loyalty programs, right? Brands
Hmm.
launch loyalty programs with the hope
Right.
of driving that retention. We love, we have a lot of loyalty partners and we love them, but at the end of the day, brands are also realizing that you're basically giving discounts to your most loyal shoppers, right? The ones that are already
Hmm.
most highest intent, you're just like discounting and reducing margins by giving them these ongoing discounts. So how do you develop loyalty is by kind of designing an experience that speaks specifically to that user and personally personalizes that experience to the user. The more personalized that user feels, the more they feel like the brand knows them and therefore more likely to develop a deeper connection to the brand that drives that more frequent, purchasing frequency and whatnot. So ultimately, you're right. Like you only have two apps downloaded, right? Very few of our customers will have hundreds of these apps downloaded. You're typically focusing on your like 5 to 6
Favorite
favorite
brands.
brands that you want a deeper brand experience with, right?
Hmm. Great. So that's, I was thinking on the app, all I can see is just, product shots and just focus on shopping. But now you're saying it should be more than that. It should be a full experience for the user. So we'll definitely share the link to Tapcart so our listeners can check it out. What about you, Neil? What's happening? I am so excited to see you speak about this stuff. I learned a lot today. So do you have like events coming up? Anything to promote?
Yeah, so first off, really excited to, have had the chance to chat with you. I really enjoyed our conversation as well. I think one of the things that I enjoy most is just, really dissecting a brand's retention strategy. I think retention has often been given a backseat to thinking about acquisition. And typically, most brands are looking at retention so one-dimensionally, right? They're thinking about it. Retention means SMS, retention means email, when those are just small little, cogs in a much larger wheel or larger flywheel that is
Hmm.
retention. And that really comes down to building an amazing customer experience, but then also creating an experience that is personalized so that user feels like you know them that much more. And again, I love dissecting that with the brand. I love understanding how all of that works because it's so different. I get to work with some of the coolest brands on the planet and that are a
That's
hundred
fun.
times cooler than I am. But at the end of the day, I enjoy every conversation largely because of who I'm sitting in front of. Those founders that are like the grittiest, smartest, hungriest individuals on the face of the planet. And so I just love my job. I love what I do. We do have an event coming up that we're partnered with Senlane. Senlane is hosting an
Sunlight.
event here in sunny San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
Commerce Roundtable. We're going to have some
Mm-hmm.
incredible speakers. I myself will also be speaking there,
Yeah.
but look forward to having everybody out. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well.
Absolutely try to follow Neal. He shares a lot of content in this 20-30 minute conversation. I learned a lot. Like I was so, as a user, I'm so hesitant to download a mobile app, but now I think you've convinced me. As a marketer, I now see like the importance of adding that or considering that as a part of your omni-channel strategy. Again, thank you so much for your time, Neal. I appreciate it. Thanks for enlightening us about mobile apps. I learned a lot. If you found value in this episode, definitely connect with Neal. We'll send all the links to the description and subscribe to the podcast. I'll see you next week.